This was not exactly Kevin's scene. The time was 8:05 p.m. He suggested they meet at 8:15, but he arrived early to make sure he got there first. The tables were dimly lit from spotlights suspended on the framework of the suspended ceiling, and ambient sounds filtered down from hidden speakers. A man with a wide mustache played a folk song on accordion on the stage. He wore a loose white shirt, his scarlet vest matched his beret and the sash around his waist. His face expressed every exquisite note, like his accordion was an extension of his soul. The song's title, "Come Back to Sorrento," hung in midair above the stage. Stratified clouds, as if from tobacco smoke, hung motionless, then wafted behind the rapid steps of waiters and waitresses. The front lights darkened, and a rear spotlight burned, leaving the musician silhouetted against the limelight. Tendrils of smoke rose and danced from his burning accordion. Kevin wore his tan corduroy jacket. It was not quite formal enough for the occasion, but by his standards, it was. He finished scrolling through the wine list on his one and selected the ready-to-order button. From nowhere, a waiter appeared.
"Can I get you something while you're waiting for the lady?"
"I'll have a rum and coke now, and when the lady arrives, I'll have a bottle of wine. What do you recommend for around 150 loonies?"
He glanced at Kevin's threadbare sleeves and raised his eyebrows slightly.
"Certainly. I would recommend a 2044 Sequoia Grove Cambrian red wine, but we also have more affordable vintages,"
the waiter added, with the slightest sniff.
"Are you suggesting I can't afford it?"
"Not at all, as you wish, sir."
He tapped the order on his one and backed away from the table. An attractive young woman delivered his drink as a new song started. It was a tango, and the accordion player was joined by an ensemble including guitar, violins, piano, and a double bass. The accordion player now played a smaller bandoneon. The spotlight reflected its gold inlay floral patterns connected with a filigree of vines. The bandoneon player held his head down and his shoulders pumped out the staccato rhythms of the tango. The wide brim of his black hat covered his eyes. Kevin became lost in the music. The Latin sounds brought back memories of steamy nights in Havana, and a woman in a summer dress, swaying to the rhythm on the dance floor. His thoughts returned to the present, and he glanced again towards the entrance in anticipation of Jade. He looked back toward the band. Wasn't the accordion player wearing a beret earlier? He realized this was a hologram and a compilation of several performances and remembered the restaurant only has live bands on the weekends and this was Thursday. A customer walked between Kevin and the stage, blocking one of the lasers projecting on his retina, resulting in a jarring two-dimensional halo. He glanced at his rum and coke, watching the light reflecting off the surface of the glistening ice cubes.
"Hey buddy."
Kevin stood and tried to not look nonplussed. She was wearing a short black skirt and carrying a small matching purse.
"Hey yourself,"
with a nervous smile, told her.
"You look great."
Her expression became demure as she looked away and thanked him.
"Is this dinner your way of apologizing for making me speak in public at the university?"
"Sorry about that. I thought it would be the best way to get information about the kidnappers."
"I hate to be a pain, but could we sit over there?"
Jade pointed to an empty table by the wall.
"Sure, why not?"
A gesture of his hand brought the waiter, who moved the menus and Kevin's drink. Jade sat with her back to the wall, facing the entrance.
"Sorry, I'm usually not this high maintenance."
"No problem. I like it better here, too."
The waiter brought the wine and presented the wine bottle for Kevin to read the label, before opening the bottle and placing it on the table. Kevin had done his research and picked up the cork, read the impression, and checked it was intact and not too dry or wet. The waiter poured a few milliliters into Kevin's glass. Kevin swirled it a few times, checking its color and clarity, and noticed the ripples that clung to the sides, indicating the correct alcohol content. He brought it to his nose and sniffed, then repeated this again and took a small sip. He nodded to the waiter, and he filled their glasses and placed menus in their places.
"I didn't know you knew so much about wines."
"I don't know that much, but I read that's what you're supposed to do when the waiter serves you. I like wine too, but I'm more of a highball kinda guy."
"You could have fooled me, and I'm not that easily fooled. The wine is excellent.
Our client gave us an expense budget, and this is a business meeting.
What's on the menu?
She opened the leather-bound folder and glanced at Kevin as the waiter arrived.
I don't know what's good here. Can you order?
Sure. Let's start with bruschetta for an appetizer, then pasta carbonara with asparagus.
Very good, sir.
The waiter walked briskly, without hurrying back to the kitchen. The hala show had not yet restarted and wordless music drifted in from a band playing in the distance, as if they were seated on the patio and the music was filtering from inside. Not long after, and the waiter reappeared with the bruschetta. Kevin was fascinated with how the wine glistened on her lips and how her head tilted back when she laughed. He studied every contour of her face, but her eyes were definitely his favorite feature. He had to look carefully to see her makeup. She had smoky shadow along the outside of the upper eyelid, a thin silvery liner on the bottom near the corner accentuated the shape that he found so appealing. Mercurial, they shifted from amused, happy, to grave. He suspected they could change to steely should the occasion arise. He noticed how they stopped to glance at the room, especially towards the door. Jade's manicured hands were resting on top of the table, and he wondered if this was a good time to put his hands on hers.
Then I noticed he was following me.
Her words jolted him. Her expression was serious but matter-of-fact.
What?
Kevin said, embarrassed as he realized he had not been paying attention. Jade noticed it too and sighed.
After you gave me Adriana Beeser's address, I drove by her home. She lives in an exclusive gated community north of Morinville called New Zion. It's exclusive since only members of their church are allowed to live there, not exclusive because you need money or anything. Actually, it looks a bit like a dump and most of the houses there are mobile homes. Security is harsh and there's razor wire on top of the gate and an armed guard at the entrance, so I didn't go in. Have you heard of them?
Yeah, they are apostles. I don't know too much else, but I'm going to check them out. When were you followed?
It was the next day. I took the bus to work and a car followed it until I got off near work. On the way home, the same guy in a different car followed the bus again. I stayed on the bus as it passed my stop, then got off and ducked into the Hudson's Bay building and down into the subway before he had time to get out of his car. Whoever he was, he didn't find me, but I took the train all the way to Inglewood when I got off at a slipper kiosk and drove home.
Kevin tensed. Someone was following Jade? Were the kidnappers aware of their operation?
What did he look like?
Late 20s, white, crew cut, steroid monster. What's wrong?
It sounds like one of the guys that kidnapped the McPherson kid.
Don't worry about it. I'm a big girl now.
She said in an immature voice that was meant to sound sarcastic but came out sexy. The music started again, but Kevin was facing away from the stage, so didn't see the bandoneon player start another tango.
So how was your day?
Okay. I got decent video of the kidnapping, but the getaway car plates were stolen, so I couldn't track them. That Beezer bitch is the best chance to lead us to the kidnappers. We should hear from them soon if they are going to ask for ransom. They're being quiet to make the old man sweat.
The waiter inserted the steaming pasta from Jade's left, then did the same for Kevin and continued to top off their drinks, in one fluid motion. The waiter put the plate with the pasta nearest to the guests and the asparagus away. Kevin felt a glow from the booze and didn't feel like talking shop anymore. Kevin held his glass out and offered a toast.
To our new partnership.
Jade clinked the rim of her glass below the rim of his.
To our new venture,
she said with mock determination. Jade took a forkful of spaghetti and rotated it against the plate until she bundled it around the fork.
This is so good.
Kevin held his spoon in his left hand and turned his forkful against it until it was wrapped as well. He realized ordering spaghetti wasn't the best choice if it ends up on his face, but the first bite changed his mind.
It really is good. Before you said you lived in Vancouver, what brings you to Edmonton?
I like the weather.
They both laughed.
Actually, I'm originally from Edmonton. I went to high school at Strathcona. I took mixed martial arts, MMA. I was on the wrestling team and was good at most sports. Things weren't good at home, and in my first year at the U of A, I dropped out and moved in with my brother in Burnaby. I told you about it already, but I was messed up in my brother's business for a couple of years and I wanted to get away. I was his bodyguard and good at it, but I can't do it anymore. One day, it really got to me, so I moved here to start a new life.
I totally get it. I haven't had a perfect life either.
I didn't know too many people out here anymore, but I had money saved and I got a place and a job at the bar. That's when I met you. You seemed like a nice guy, but not too nice. I don't feel like I really fit in with the straight crowd.
She realized her Freudian slip and changed the subject.
Have you always lived in Edmonton?
No, I grew up in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. I was a good student but didn't always get my assignments in. Learning was fun but homework wasn't, and English courses were boring so I skipped. Hacking and making weapons were even more fun. Like I said before, they pushed me into the army. I had good friends, but the army thinks friends are expendable. I liked it for a while, but I stayed for one day too long. They stationed me with the Princess Pats, and I had enough, so they discharged me in Edmonton.
The conversation turned to lighter subjects and the glow of the wine, the music and the ambience took over. Kevin reaches across the table and places his hand on Jade's. Jade's confession brought up unpleasant memories. The next day, she logged on to Dr. Feldman's website to see if he could help her exorcise ghosts. She wasn't sure how she felt about Dr. Feldman. Although he wanted to help, or was programmed to help, he was too detached, like her own father. And what good was he? On the other hand, he was very perceptive, and his computerized brain held a vast knowledge, so if he couldn't help, who could? The doctor turned away from his desk to face Jade.
Welcome back. How have you been since the last time we spoke?
Okay. I had a nice dinner this evening with a man that I like.
That's good. You need to create and maintain positive social relationships to get healthy. Have there been any warning signs of an abusive partner? Does he seem controlling or jealous?
No, he seems very nice. Why do you ask?
People who have had an abusive childhood sometimes ignore warning signs and get into abusive relationships as adults. That would be a setback to your progress. In order to get a full picture, continue where we left off last week. Please tell me more about your adolescence.
High school started out okay, then my grades got worse halfway through the first year. My mom looked at my grades and freaked out.
Why don't you focus your school? All you do is stare. Focus.
Jade said this in a heavy Chinese accent, imitating the way her mother spoke when she was angry.
Then she slapped my face. Weakness needed to be punished. If punishment didn't work, then she gave me more punishment, and on and on and on. Soon I couldn't do anything right. If I started walking with my right foot, she would yell that I should start with my left. Non-stop nagging, hitting, putting me down. My dad was usually gone, and when he came home said nothing. I was falling apart. I couldn't sleep at night. I got yelled at for sleeping in. I was lazy. I was stupid. When I tried to tell her about my problem, she said I was just making excuses. I could feel my brain slowing, but I became super hyper and jumpy. When my mother yelled at me, I started yelling back and it got worse. At university, I didn't make friends. I was on edge and defensive. When I was in a lecture, I didn't hear what the professor was saying since I was looking at the other students, reading their expressions and body language for signs of aggression. It was near the end of the first year and I was failing. Not just Asian failing, but real failing. Then she slapped my face. Weakness needed to be punished. If punishment didn't work, then she gave me more punishment, and on and on and on. Soon I couldn't do anything right. If I started walking with my right foot, she would yell that I should start with my left. Non-stop nagging, hitting, putting me down. My dad was usually gone, and when he came home said nothing. I was falling apart. I couldn't sleep at night. I got yelled at for sleeping in. I was lazy. I was stupid. When I tried to tell her about my problem, she said I was just making excuses. I could feel my brain slowing, but I became super hyper and jumpy. When my mother yelled at me, I started yelling back and it got worse. At university, I didn't make friends. I was on edge and defensive. When I was in a lecture, I didn't hear what the professor was saying since I was looking at the other students, reading their expressions and body language for signs of aggression. It was near the end of the first year and I was failing. Not just Asian failing, but real failing. When I was near the end of a final exam, I knew I messed up and I just wanted to go home, lock my bedroom door, and curl up on the floor. The girl sitting next to me finished her test already, stood up and jerked her arm toward me. My left arm shot out to sweep it away and my right fist slammed into the girl's face. Hard. Her head bounced back and she wobbled and reached out to steady herself before slumping over the desk. She had one arm halfway in her coat. I realized the girl was just putting on her jacket. So, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. My hands were shaking, and I reached out to touch the girl's blonde hair, then stopped myself. She wouldn't want me to after what I did. The girl's head lay on the desk, her eyes were closed, and blood streamed out of her crooked nose and pooling all over her chest. So, her friend yelled, "What the fuck did you do that for, you freak? Someone call the police." I just said, No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. She just screamed at me that her friend might die and she didn't do anything to me. I hurt that girl really bad. I know she didn't do anything. She didn't deserve it. I wished I could die. My nerves were fried, and I was so filled with regret and hatred for myself. I tried to apologize again, but my brain was not even working good enough to make the words come out, like my mouth was numb. The room was spinning. I was out of control. No one could understand. No one could after what I had done. I grabbed my jacket and bag and ran out of the lecture hall. Everyone was staring at me, and I could feel their hatred like it was a flamethrower.
Jade stopped speaking and stared at the floor as if catatonic.
It's okay. Let's take a little break.
Dr. Feldman put down his fountain pen and said nothing for a minute.
I hear someone who was experiencing deep suffering and made a terrible mistake and who has expressed profound remorse. I would like you and I to do some role-playing. I will play the role of someone who is suffering and feeling very guilty, and you will play the role of someone who is trying to make me feel better and to forgive myself.
What good would that do? I didn't come here to play computer games.
On the inside, you are a compassionate person. You just proved that to me. I want you to learn to have compassion for yourself and to forgive yourself.
Dr. Feldman paused for Jade to absorb this. She nodded her head. Dr. Feldman started.
I'm feeling awful. I hurt you really bad. I wish I could die. I feel like I'm having a breakdown.
Don't feel bad. I know it was an accident. Everybody has accidents. I know what you've been through. I know what you are feeling.
I'm very, very sorry for what I have done. Can you please forgive me?
Yes, I forgive you. That's great you think I'm a compassionate person, but I haven't even told you half of it yet.